Hello everyone. This is the story of what if Naruto entered Ino's secret yearning. Here we begin. Simple things that occur every day could change your life forever. For example, you are a C-average student and decide to study hard on a test. You are rewarded with an A, and, therefore, you begin to study every night to ensure the good grades. Earning has changed your life. No longer are you on a path towards working night shifts at the local burger joint, but you are on the track towards receiving a master's degree in forensic sciences. Or, say you are one of those kids who sees others being picked on every single day but never stop to help. What if one day you do help that other kid out? Suddenly you find yourself with the newest and most best friend you could have ever imagined. It is amazing how simple things can change our daily lives so easily and we never seem to notice it. When I was 19, one of those simple things changed my life forever. It was one of those things I had never expected to happen, one of those things I believed would never in a million years happen to me, but of course, fate has its way about doing things on its own, with or without your approval, because, believe me, if I had had a say in what had happened 3 years ago, I would have never agreed to it. Some people's lives change for the better, and I suppose mine did too, in the long run, but at 19, while I was considered an adult, I still acted like a child, and therefore, I didn't see the good in what happened to me. Changing my normal lifestyle to something that was the complete opposite hardly seemed fair, especially when I hadn't done anything to deserve it. I was a sophomore student at Konoha University, studying to become a history professor. I was a hard-working student and I lived in an apartment a block away from campus, because I found living on campus bothersome. But, there were times when living in my apartment was bothersome as well. I had a roommate, but he wasn't just any kind of roommate. We were involved, really deeply involved, and had been for 2 years, starting in our senior year of high school. And yes, I said he, and if you're offended, then too damn bad, because I loved him more than even I thought it was possible. People found it confusing how the two of us, the two most opposite people in the entire universe, had gotten to love each other like we had. To this day, I'm not quite sure, but that really doesn't matter. We'd been friends since we were in junior high, but we were the kind of friends that always picked on one another and always fought. During high school, things calmed down a bit, and in our last year, we both came to realize that our relationship had somehow crossed over to something more than friendship. Uzumaki Naruto was everything I was not. He was bright, energetic, and happy. While I, Uchiha Sasuke, was cold, reserved, and annoyed. Somehow I began to need his energy and exuberance to survive, and I suppose he needed my aloofness to keep going as well. Naruto had moved into my apartment during the second semester of our freshman year, and we'd been living together ever since. It was nice, having him around all the time, though I never said it to him aloud, but I think he knew how I felt nevertheless. We loved each other's company and we tried to spend as much time together as we could, considering our conflicting schedules. While I wanted to pursue history, Naruto wanted to pursue English, and therefore, we never had classes together, but always managed to spend some time each day with one another. It was a pattern I grew into and soon realized, after the incident, that I couldn't live without. The incident happened early during our sophomore year and it changed everything. Some days I blame myself, other days I blame those kids, there were days I even blamed Naruto, but that never lasted long, believe me. The months, the years, after the incident were terribly hard to bear with and I had to suffer more than I had ever suffered in my life. I began to realize how much I truly loved him, needed him, and couldn't live without him, but it was hard, after the incident, to be with him, because he couldn't remember. Simple things can change the course of your lifetime. My life changed with one single thing, something that happened to millions of people each day, and I never saw it coming. But my story has a good ending. As you read my story, think of your own life and be grateful for everything that you have. Because it's possible that you might never get it back. But, then again, sometimes you might. Beep beep beep. Naruto, will you stop poking me while I'm driving? Said 19-year-old Uchiha Sasuke to his boyfriend of 2 years. But you're not telling me where we're going and I want to know, the blonde whined. You've been trying to get it out of me for a long time now, Naruto, and poking me is not going to help any, Sasuke said with a chuckle as he glanced over to look at the pouting blonde. He felt himself crack under that cute stare. Don't do that, Naruto. You know I can't stand that look. But Naruto only intensified it, giving Sasuke bright teary blue eyes and trembling lower lip. Damn it, Naruto, I'm not telling, Sasuke exclaimed. It's a surprise, all right. I don't want you to know yet. You wanted to do something fun because it's our 2-year anniversary, but I want it to be a surprise, so deal with it, okay? Ah. Sasuke. Naruto whined loudly. Just tell me, please. I thought you liked surprises, the brunette said. But only when I sort of know what's going to happen. You're no fun. You keep everything to yourself so easily. I've been trying for a week to figure this out, but you haven't let anything slip. That's because I want it to be a surprise. So stop acting like a 4-year-old and shut up, Sasuke said, turning his attention back to the road. The blonde looked away grumpily, sagging against the passenger seat. He continued pouting for a while before giving up and turning the radio on, flipping through stations before settling on the song Pump It. Arg, what a stupid song, change it, Sasuke said. No, I like it, Naruto said stubbornly. Sasuke shook his head and turned to a station playing Kryptonite. That's better. No, this beeps, Naruto said, changing the station back. Sasuke glared at him, fully aware that Naruto loved that song and was being stubborn on purpose. Just put it back. How can you listen to this crap? The Uchiha said, changing the station yet again. How can you listen to this crap? Naruto retorted, switching the station. Naruto. Sasuke said, glaring at him. Just leave the station alone. Naruto exclaimed, glaring back. No chance in hell, Sasuke said, reaching for the dial again. Sasuke. Naruto exclaimed again. I'm changing the song, Naruto, live with it. No. Sasuke. The road, watch out. Naruto screamed, pointing through the windshield. The Uchiha snapped his head up to look at the group of children running into the street to grab a stray basketball. Shit. Sasuke swore as he slammed on the brakes and swerved the car to the left side of the road, just as another car turned the corner. Suddenly, everything began to move as though it were slow motion, but Sasuke was only aware of Naruto's loud scream as he swerved again to avoid the oncoming car. And then, everything went black. Beep. Oh. Sasuke exclaimed, jumping up into a sitting position and staring crazily around the room, feeling his heart pounding rapidly in his chest. Calm down, honey, or you'll get worse, a serene voice said. Sasuke around the white plain room, then up into the face of a young-looking woman. Where am I? He asked. Oh, honey, you're in the hospital. You've been out for almost 5 hours, the nurse said, slowly helping him into a sitting position, leaning against the back of the bed. The hospital? Sasuke repeated, and then his breath caught in his throat as he remembered. His anniversary, driving to the secret place. Bickering over the radio station, the children, Naruto. Naruto. Where is he? Sasuke exclaimed. Oh, your friend? The nurse said, looking grave. He's in intense care right now, dear. The other car hit his side extremely hard. Is he? Sasuke choked out, feeling his heart being squeezed in his chest. No, she replied, patting Sasuke's hand and relieving the brunette a bit. He's hurt very badly, though, and we are not sure when he'll be okay. I'm not really sure what is going on with him. But, for now, you have to sit and relax or you'll get hurt even more. I don't give a damn about myself. I'm worried about Naruto. Can I see him? Sasuke exclaimed. Not until you're better, the nurse said. Yes, Sasuke, you should calm down, a male voice said as someone walked in through the door. Sasuke looked up and stared in surprise because of all the people in the world. His mathematics professor was in the room. What the hell are you doing here? Sasuke demanded. The doctors called Iruka because they found his number in Naruto's wallet. I was with Iruka and obviously he couldn't drive in a state of complete hysteria, so I did. And here I am, Hitaki Kakashi said, grinning behind a scarf that covered the bottom of his face. Joyous, Sasuke replied sarcastically, but was grateful that at least Naruto had someone who cared for him watching him right now. Iruka and Kakashi were professors at Konoha University, where Sasuke and Naruto both attended. Iruka, however, had been Naruto's legal guardian since Naruto's parents had died in a car accident when he had been 4. Naruto's parents and Iruka had been close friends, and because Naruto didn't have any other relatives, Iruka had taken over. Naruto had lived with him until almost a year ago, when he had moved in at Sasuke's apartment off campus. So, how are you feeling, Sasuke? Kakashi asked. Fine, he replied sourly. Just go away, you're not family. But I'm all you have right now. That's not very comforting, Sasuke said, but then suddenly sat up straighter as he realized something. Wait, if they looked for someone to call for Naruto, that means they looked for someone for me. Don't tell me they called. Sasuke. Oh, my little brother, are you okay? Came a sudden loud voice after the slamming of the hospital room door. Oh, dear God, Sasuke said as an older man who looked almost identical to him came rushing in. Get out of her now, Aniki, Sasuke said angrily. But why? Uchiha Itachi said. You're hurt, I need to stay. Kakashi-sensei's here, Sasuke said. I'm fine. And just a minute ago I thought I wasn't family, Kakashi said, pretending to look confused, and Sasuke just glared at him. I have to stay, Sasuke, Itachi said. You're only making me hurt more, Sasuke said, as he struggled in the grasp of his older, not quite sane, brother. Yes, I agree with him, sir, the nurse said, stepping in. Could you kindly step outside and wait to sign the hospital papers? Sasuke will probably be released tomorrow. He just needs to stay overnight to ensure that nothing else has happened to him. What about Naruto? Sasuke asked immediately. Oh, I'm not sure about your friend, dear. He'll probably be here for quite a while, she replied, looking solemn. Sasuke felt his heart crack slightly in his chest as Itachi and Kakashi both left the room. He sighed deeply and shut his eyes. Naruto, his Naruto, was stuck lying in some room being prodded and poked, and he was stuck in here, perfectly all right, but restrained from going anywhere near him. Damn it, he couldn't stand for it. He needed to see Naruto, to see that he was okay, and then to get the hell out of that hospital. Darling, if you tense up so much, you'll get worse. Please try to calm down, the nurse said. Sasuke opened his mouth to tell her to beep off, when she continued. I know you're worried about your friend, but there is nothing you can do right now. She smiled. Tell you what, if you eat your dinner and take a nap, then maybe I can get you out to check on Naruto, all right? He hated being treated like a child, but nodded anyway. Fine, he mumbled. She beamed. Good. I'll be back with your food. Actually, could I just sleep for now? I'm kind of tired, Sasuke said. He knew his anxiety to see Naruto would prevent him from doing any sleeping or eating. But he could pretend to sleep, he couldn't pretend to eat. The nurse nodded. No problem, go right ahead, dear. Sasuke sagged against the pillows and shut his eyes. As he thought about Naruto, he gradually fell asleep. How do you suppose we tell him? Sasuke heard a voice say somewhere above him. The voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Maybe we should wait until tomorrow, came another voice, sounding very nervous. But he'd want to know now, replied the first voice. Oh, this is horrible. Just completely and totally horrible, exclaimed yet another voice, and Sasuke realized he was listening to his brother, Kakashi and Iruka. This will kill him, Iruka said. It's already killed me. Everything will be fine, Kakashi said in an unusually consoling voice, causing Sasuke to furrow his brow in confusion. What were they talking about? We just have to let Sasuke know first. That's what's most important right now, Kakashi said. He would want to know from us than from one of the nurses, Itachi said. But how do we tell him? Iruka said frantically. How do we let him know that Naruto is in a coma and we don't know when he'll wake up? And how do we tell him that the boy might have some kind of amnesia? Kakashi said. How do we let him know that? Itachi questioned. Sasuke suddenly sat up and stared at them, all three looking aghast that he had been awake during their conversation. Feeling as though someone had just stepped on his heart and had grounded it to dust, Sasuke demanded, What did you just say? They wouldn't let me see him for 5 days, 5 whole days, and I found myself slowly going insane. How could they not realize how much I needed to see him? How could they not have noticed that I was frantically getting worse because of being restricted from seeing him? Okay, they did notice that I was getting worse, but they didn't understand that if I could just have seen him, once, even, that I would have gotten better. Seeing him would have salvaged my anxiety. But they didn't realize that. They only saw what the machines said, and the fact was that I was getting worse. I had worried myself into a fever, and that didn't seem to go well with my cuts and bruises because they all opened up again. One day I had to change bandages 3 times because they kept bleeding and bleeding. But it wasn't only my worrying for Naruto that was causing me more pain. I hated hospitals and couldn't stand being in them for more than 24 hours. For me, being stuck in one room with bandages, IVs and other crap stuck into me or over me, especially with Naruto in the state that he was, it was starting to get to me. I had never had a good experience with hospitals. My first time at one was when I had been 4 and had gotten my first shots. Of course, no child likes being poked with a needle, but I couldn't stand it. My brother teased me quite a bit for crying my eyes out, but I couldn't help it. The other time I had been in a hospital was the night my parents had been burned in a fire. I'd been stuck out in the waiting room with Itachi and we'd been waiting all night to see if our parents could have been cured. However, they hadn't survived and, at the age of 7, it had been traumatizing. So, you can see that my hate of hospitals had come from a good stem, and even though I was now 19, my hatred for the disinfectant-smelling place hadn't gone down a bit. And, then, of course, there was Naruto. He was in a coma, and had been for a total for 6 days. He was in a room that was on the opposite side of the floor I was on and was being watched constantly for any signs of movement. He was supposed to wake up with some form of amnesia, having no memory whatsoever of the crash and even things earlier than that. The doctors weren't sure what type of amnesia he would get, and not knowing was driving me mad. I couldn't help but wonder if he would forget me, too. After 5 days, once my fever had gone down, my nurse, whose name I'd later found out was Rika, took me to see Naruto. My anxiety for his welfare made it almost impossible for me to even stand, but when Rika had suggested a wheelchair, I adamantly refused. I was an Uchiha, and would not be pushed around in a wheelchair. Therefore, I walked, and I made it to my Naruto's room, and looked in through the glass on the door. I had never felt so afraid before in my life. Beep beep beep. You can go inside if you'd like, a soft voice said behind him. Sasuke glanced over his shoulder to see his nurse watching him worriedly. I know you're hurting, dear. Your teacher told me about your relationship with him, so go on inside and let it out. I'll tell the nurses to give you some time alone, Rika said. Despite himself, Sasuke was starting to really like his nurse. Thanks, he mumbled and then walked inside the room. The room was identical to Sasuke's on the other side of the floor, with the exception that there were more machines and the fact that the window shades were drawn close. That instantly bothered him. Naruto loved the sun, loved being outdoors. How could they even fathom drawing the shades? Sasuke walked over to the windows and pulled the shades open, letting the sun shine in through the glass and bask over Naruto's body, giving the boy an ethereal glow. Sasuke sighed in relief. That was how it should be. He walked over to Naruto's side and sat down in the fold-up chair that had been placed there. Breathing deeply from within his lungs, he finally turned his gaze onto Naruto for the first time in almost a week. As he stared at the figure lying motionless on the bed, Sasuke could only think that this wasn't Naruto. There was no way this could be Naruto. The Naruto he knew was lively, active and grinning that odd grin all the time. This Naruto was pale, helpless and immobile. What had happened to his Naruto? Sasuke shut his eyes tightly and shook his head. It wasn't going to help anything if he started going insane. He knew this was his Naruto. There could only be one person in the entire world named Uzumaki Naruto, and this was definitely him. But Sasuke was having a hard time coming to terms with it. Naruto wasn't the kind of person who could handle being restrained on some hospital bed with IVs stuck up his arm. He doesn't know he's in a hospital, remember? The voice in his head reminded him. Sasuke shuddered slightly, remembering that Naruto was in a coma and had no idea where he was or what he was doing. Naruto was in this state because of him. It's my fault he's stuck here like this. If I hadn't been so annoyed by him that night and had just let him listen to whatever damn radio station he wanted to, then, neither of us would be here right now. We'd have celebrated our anniversary and everything would be fine. He wouldn't be lying here in a coma. Damn it. Sasuke exclaimed, putting his face in his hands. Why did I do that? Why didn't I just let him do what he wanted, at least for that night? It's my beeping fault he's lying here, looking like. Sasuke glanced up into the blonde's face that was pale and expressionless. His eyes were shut, and his body lay there with no movement whatsoever.
Sasuke felt his heart begin to crack again as he reached a hand out and slowly ran his fingers over Naruto's cheek, wincing slightly at how cold his skin felt. But he willed himself to go on, letting his fingers trace around the blonde's face, eyelids, nose, and lips, before reaching down and grasping Naruto's hand in his own. Even though he knew Naruto couldn't hear him, he still quietly said the words that Uchihas never said easily. Naruto, I'm sorry, this was all my fault. If I hadn't gotten so annoyed by you, then you wouldn't be stuck like this, Sasuke muttered inaudibly, his grip around the blonde's hand tightening. Please get better soon. You have to get better soon. I don't know what I'll do without you. Just then there was a knock on the door and someone called, Sasuke? The young Uchiha looked up quickly and glared at his brother. Get lost, he growled, annoyed that Itachi might have heard his previous confession. If Itachi had heard anything, he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he walked inside and said, I know you want to stay, but your doctor is here and wants to check up on you. You'll probably be released soon, so come on. Get lost, Sasuke growled again. Itachi folded his arms and repeated, Sasuke, come on. I said, get lost. Listen, sitting here is not going to get you better, Itachi said. I know you're worried about Naruto, we all are, but you can't sit in here all day. Just go away. Itachi sighed and walked over to Sasuke's side. He placed a hand on his brother's shoulder and said, I understand how you're feeling, but... No, you don't know how I'm feeling. Sasuke exclaimed as he turned to face Itachi, swatting the older Uchiha's hand off his shoulder. You can't understand at all what I'm going through right now, so don't start preaching to me about some stupid crap. I'm not preaching to you, Sasuke, Itachi said calmly as he watched his brother worriedly. However, his concern only credited to annoy Sasuke off even more. The younger Uchiha jumped to his feet and exclaimed, Quit looking at me like that. I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me. Those damn doctors should help him. Sasuke pointed down at Naruto. They should help Naruto get better. He's the one suffering. I think you're suffering more than Naruto is, Sasuke, Itachi thought sadly as he stared at Sasuke, wondering what he could say to calm him down. Sasuke. Listen. He began, but Sasuke cut him off again. Shut up. Just get the hell out, he exclaimed, looking away. He sat back down on the chair and said, Can you please just leave me alone? Itachi sighed again. You have 5 minutes until the doctor gets here. I expect you to be in your room when he arrives. The older Uchiha then walked swiftly out of the room. Doctor Hinata was an old prickly-looking man with thick glasses and an annoying, scrutinizing gaze. Sasuke hated him immediately, and therefore, just sat on the bed staring lividly at the wall while his doctor checked over his charts. Well, Sasuke, he said in a nasally voice that also annoyed Sasuke off. You're looking good. You've recovered from the fever perfectly and your cuts and bruises have all healed. I think you're set. I'm free to go? Sasuke asked, glancing at him. Yes, you're free to go. Have your brother sign the discharge papers and you can gather your things and hightail it out of here, Hinata said with an attempt to be funny. Sasuke only shifted his gaze back on the wall. Now, if anything else happens, come see me again, all right? Not a chance in hell. I think I'll be fine, Sasuke said, getting to his feet as the doctor headed towards the door. Just before he left, Sasuke called after him, remembering something he'd wanted to ask. Wait, I have a question. Dr. Hinata turned around and nodded. Sure. Do you know anything else about, my friend? Sasuke asked, feeling a bit awkward and embarrassed even asking. The Uzumaki boy, right? Sasuke nodded. Well, all I know is nothing. I'm sorry, but with comatose patients, it's virtually impossible to tell when they'll wake up or what's exactly wrong, the doctor said. The only thing I can tell you is that comatose patients, though physically aware, are still mentally aware, sort of. If you sit and talk to him, it can trigger body movement and responses. Comatose patients can wake up, but there are cases when they do not. I hope, for your sake and his, that doesn't happen. Sasuke felt his heart break. Thank you, he mumbled. No problem, the doctor said before walking out just as Itachi entered. Ready to go? He asked.
Yeah, I'll meet you at the car. I have to do something first though, Sasuke said. Itachi nodded, understanding what Sasuke meant, and left. Sasuke walked out a few seconds after and made his way straight to Naruto's room. Slipping in unnoticed, he shut the door behind him and walked over to the bedside. He let his eyes roam over the motionless blonde, trying to be strong despite what his doctor had just told him. No, Naruto will survive this. He will get through this. I'll kill him if he doesn't. Sasuke sighed and grasped Naruto's hand. The doc said to talk to him, right? Hey, Dobi, Sasuke said. Wake up, got it? You can pull through this. Sasuke shut his eyes, picturing a grinning Naruto, wondering what the blonde would say in reply. His lips quirked slightly and he said, yes, that was sort of like a compliment, but don't expect it to happen again. Shaking his head, Sasuke sighed and said, listen, I'll be back, all right? Don't worry, okay? I'm coming over every day. No damn nurse or doctor is going to keep me away. Sasuke almost laughed, thinking to how Naruto would find this confession extremely amusing. Yes, I'm not acting like myself, but you do that to me. Sasuke was suddenly a bit glad that Naruto couldn't hear him. The blonde would have mocked him for life. Just then the door opened and Rika stuck her head in. There you are, she said. Who let you in? Sasuke replied simply, I did. Rika gave him a reprimanding look, but it was then replaced by a soft smile. I understand. Now, say your goodbyes and go. Your brother's waiting for you and Naruto's doctor is coming to check up on his patient. Sasuke nodded and stood. He looked his Naruto over before leaning down and softly beeping Naruto on the lips. As he did so, Sasuke could have sworn he had felt Naruto move, but when he pulled away, there was no other evidence of what he'd felt. He sighed and whispered, I'll be back tomorrow, okay? The imaginary Naruto gave him a bright grin and the thumbs up sign. I'll be fine, it said. Go. Sasuke nodded, not caring as much as he should have that he was talking to an imaginary Dobi, and then followed Rika out the door. Beep beep beep. I hadn't been aware of how much I needed and relied on Naruto's presence until the first day it was gone. When I returned to my apartment for the first time in almost a week, I stood in the middle of the room, feeling as though I didn't belong there. The walls seemed too plain, the couch too soft, and the bed too stiff. Yet, everything was the same. The living room was exactly how we'd left it the afternoon before the accident. Remote control on the couch pillows strewn over the floor because of Naruto's initiated pillow fight, the DVDs we'd picked to watch later still sitting neatly upon one another by the television, and Naruto's ramen cups littered the coffee table. It had made the pain even more unbearable, seeing everything looking just as it had been, and so I had made my way down the hall into the bedroom. In here I found our unmade bed with Naruto's clothes littering one half of the mattress. Our books and homework cluttered our two desks on opposite sides of the room, with Naruto's side a bit messier than mine. As I took in the familiar, yet foreign, sight before me, I expected Naruto to come bounding in screaming something stupid like, "We're out of ramen. Let's get some." But as I had stood there, waiting for the scream I knew would not come, I felt my well-placed resolve start to break. After so many years of being around a constant source of annoyance, anger, despair, and happiness, I suddenly found myself lost beyond all words. Beep beep beep. Have you gone to see him today? Sasuke nodded. I see him every morning before my first class, then at noon, during lunch, and then once after my last class. It's a daily ritual now, he replied. Haruno Sakura, a somewhat friend, smiled at him from across the table. That's nice. I went and saw him yesterday, you know. All of us did. Me, Ino, Lee, Hinata, Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, even Gaara. The nurse almost fainted at the big crowd. She shuddered slightly and continued, it was so sad. I felt like crying. He didn't even look like himself. It was as if someone had stuck a mannequin in his place. Yeah, I know, Sasuke said tightly. Oh, I don't mean to make you upset, Sasuke-kun, she said, touching his hand. It was just so surprising. I didn't know what to do. And, he's been like this for what? A week. A week and a half today, Sasuke answered. While the accident seemed like years ago to anyone else, Sasuke was constantly reminded of it when he awoke alone in bed every morning. Even his dreams sometimes depicted the horrendous crash, and Sasuke often awoke in the middle of the night in cold sweats, not able to return to sleep for about an hour. Every day for the last week and a half, he went to the hospital and sat by Naruto's bed, holding the blonde's hand and talked to him like the doctor had said. He talked about whatever he could think about. The weather, his teachers and classes, the damn doctors that weren't doing anything. There were also times he just sat there, holding Naruto's hand, and thought about the night of the crash and how everything had been his fault. No matter what anyone told him, Sasuke had decided that everything that had happened had truly been his fault. He needed to blame someone for what had happened to Naruto, and while he didn't want to be the cause of it all, there was no one else. Oh, of course he blamed the doctors for keeping Naruto in a coma. He made it obvious he hated them every time he was in the hospital, but he also blamed the driver in the other car and even blamed those kids playing in the street. Sasuke hadn't found any reason to blame Naruto yet. It hadn't been Naruto's fault Sasuke wasn't watching the road. That had been his own. Lately, Sasuke had slowly grown accustomed to seeing Naruto 3 times a day and had come to accept being alone in the apartment. But Sasuke tried to spend as little time there as possible, preferring to study in the library than alone at home.
At the moment, he was at the Konoha University Library, studying for a class with Sakura, who was a closer friend of Naruto's than she was with him. But Sasuke needed someone to talk, and with Naruto-gun, Sakura was runner-up, and she seemed glad to keep him company.
Sasuke-kun, how are you feeling? Sakura asked. How do you think I'm feeling? He snapped. She asked him this every beeping day and it always irritated him to no end. Sakura sighed. The same response again. I know that you don't feel good with Naruto in the hospital. If you know, then don't ask. Sasuke-kun, we're all worried about you. You're like a walking zombie. Sleep, eat, study, and more sleep. That's not good for you, Sakura said. And this is different from before. How? I know how much you love Naruto, but you can't keep letting yourself rot like you are. It's not healthy and you'll land yourself in the hospital with Naruto. So what? It's better than being stuck out here, Sasuke exclaimed brashly. Sakura blinked and stared at him for a moment before smiling. You miss him a lot, don't you? Sasuke winced slightly and looked away, not responding. It's okay to miss him, you know, Sakura said gently. HMPH. Who said I did? Sasuke lied. Sakura frowned. You're such a liar, Sasuke-kun. Shut up, he snapped. He then glanced at his watch and got to his feet. I've got to go. Already? But you didn't even study, Sakura said. Big deal. I'm going down to see Naruto before my next class, Sasuke said, stuffing books into his shoulder bag. See? You do miss him, Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke smirked. Surprising, isn't it? As Sakura watched Sasuke run out of the library, she smiled to herself and replied, No, Sasuke-kun, it's not. I'll spare you all of the details. During the first month and a half Naruto was still in his coma. My days were the same. Wake up, eat, visit Naruto, classes, visit Naruto, lunch, classes, visit Naruto, dinner, study and sleep. Rarely did I talk with anyone, though Sakura always made it a point to annoy me. I would never admit that her constant babbling did take my mind off other pressing things. If Sakura knew her antics were working, she'd never give up. In recent years, I have become more tolerant of her behavior, and we are close friends. But during those days, I had never felt so alone, and that surprised me. I had been a lonely boy during childhood, always standoffish and quiet. After the death of my parents, I was put into the care of my aunt and uncle. Under their supervision, I became even more alone and distant, despite their constant attempts to change me. Itachi and I moved out once he turned 18, and believe me, living with my eccentric brother didn't quite fix me either. But it had been during those years that I met Naruto and our story began. I mentioned before that we were rivals before friends, and our constant arguing and fighting became the highlights of my everyday. I ached to see him at school because it would give me another chance to tease him or humiliate him. I hoped for him to initiate a fight so that I could kick his ass 10 different ways. I hadn't understood my need to his presence then, because at the age of 12 my intelligence hadn't quite reached its potential. However, I understand it now, and I think I began understanding during those days I visited Naruto in the hospital. I needed him because I needed to be needed. Yes, I know that it is a rather strange concept, but it is the truth. I had felt so alone for such a long time that being needed by someone, even if it was to cause havoc each day, was like a new drug I couldn't get enough of, and I had never felt so wonderful in my life. And, one evening while I was at the hospital visiting Naruto, that feeling came back. It was during the second month of his comatose state, and of course, I didn't realize the feeling until the day after when I sat down and thought about it. But, once I could only think that it was the best day I had had in a long time. Beep beep beep. Ah. Sasuke, you're back. Rika greeted the young Uchiha as he walked out of the elevators. Good evening, he replied, having grown a bit fonder of the nurse each day. She was the one always making sure he could be alone with Naruto every time he visited, and Sasuke knew he'd have to repay her somehow. Out of all the doctors and nurses he'd met, Rika was the one he tolerated most. Have you eaten yet? She asked. Sasuke shook his head. Would you like anything? Actually, some black coffee would be nice, thank you, he replied, and she nodded before walking away. Sasuke made his way into Naruto's room and took his usual chair by the bed. The blonde was no better today than he had been 2 months ago, and Sasuke's worrying was slowly increasing. There had been a few days when he'd worried so much he'd skipped classes to stay with the blonde, which only earned him lectures from Iruka, while Kakashi stood off to the side, grinning. Ever since the accident, Sasuke had been seeing more of Kakashi and Iruka than he cared to. They came to visit Naruto once a week and found his visits thrice daily a bit troubling. Sasuke ignored them as best he could, but when they realized he wasn't going to listen, they brought reinforcement. His brother. While Sasuke had grown into ignoring his brother whenever possible, when Itachi wanted to be heard, he would be heard, and he made it loud and clear. Sasuke was sure his hearing would never be the same again. But even with his brother, Iruka, and Kakashi ganging up on his unhealthy visiting, Sasuke hadn't changed his routine at all. If anything, he strengthened it, finding time to visit the blonde a fourth time whenever he could. What his teachers and brother didn't realize or understand was that being with Naruto as much as he could made him start to accept things better. Sasuke had accepted things, especially after a month and a half of visiting Naruto, and he had started thinking that maybe he could ease off on the visiting a bit. But, when he thought about it later, he felt sick about even fathoming the possibility. Not visiting Naruto would be too hard for him to handle because when he wasn't with the blonde he felt incomplete, and it was a feeling he couldn't stand. Sasuke sighed and shook his head, clearing his mind of all thoughts. He reached for the blonde's hand and squeezed it softly before letting it rest in his open palm. Hey, Dobi, I'm back again, Sasuke said, feeling the bit of awkwardness he always did when talking to his boyfriend who couldn't talk back. But even though he knew that, he still did it, because, if anyway, it gave me a peace of mind. You're probably getting sick of me, aren't you? Sasuke asked. Well, too damn bad, because I'm not leaving, ever. You're going to deal with me until you get better, and then once you're out of here, I'm never going to leave your side. I'm not letting anything like this happen to you again. Sasuke squeezed the blonde's hand and then beeped the back of it softly, only to drop it as if lightning had struck him. He looked down at the blonde's hand and jumped to feet in shock as he saw Naruto's fingers move. Sasuke stammered and then looked up into his eyes and saw his eyelids trying to blink open, fluttering slightly. Sasuke practically flew out the door into the nurse's station. Naruto. He's waking up. Quick, room 202. Sasuke exclaimed frantically. Rika, who'd heard Sasuke's exclamation, grabbed his arm and dragged him back to Naruto's room, one of Naruto's own nurses following after. In the blonde's room, the nurses checked the machines and the patient, but then before any conclusion had been made, the blonde stopped all signs of movement. It was as if nothing had happened at all. What happened? Sasuke said, staring at Naruto blankly. Oh, honey, Rika said consolingly, it was just a little spell. So, he's still in a coma? Sasuke asked. Unfortunately, yes, dear. But it was a good sign. A very good sign, Rika replied. Sasuke clenched his fist at his sides to prevent himself from hitting something, or someone. I'm going home, he ground over and left quickly. He returned to his apartment in record time due to the fact he had driven at about 95 miles per hour, trying to calm his nerves. Of course, that only intensified how horrible he felt, making his anger and frustration reach the point of exploding. And explode it did when right after he walked into his apartment, he slammed the door and then slammed his fist fiercely into the wall. Damn it! He yelled, not caring if he woke up the entire building. Damn it! Sasuke leaned against the wall he'd previously been beating and slid down to the floor. He put his face in his hands and took a deep breath. God, he was so damn close, so close. Why didn't he wake up? Why? He moved? That's great, Sakura exclaimed the next day during class. Great. Sakura, he didn't wake up. He's still in the same place he was 2 months ago. What's great about that? Sasuke snapped. Are you blind? Or just stupid? She questioned. I know he's still not awake, but at least he's progressed. Naruto moving even a little is a good sign. After hearing her say it like that, Sasuke did feel a little stupid. He'd been so angry that Naruto hadn't woken up he didn't give himself any time to be glad that Naruto showing movement meant he was better. And that meant he wasn't even close to how he'd been before. That thought alone was comforting. He moved, Sasuke said slowly as if he wasn't quite sure himself. Yes. Naruto moved, Sakura exclaimed, beaming. What is this? Naruto moved. Is he awake now? Came another voice, startling the two friends. Sasuke turned to look at Hyuga Neji, a classmate and friend of Naruto and definitely not him. Yes, Naruto moved. Last night, Sasuke replied coolly. That is wonderful news. I must go see him later, Neji said. He has not awakened yet, however? No, he has not. Neji sighed. That is unfortunate. I miss him hanging around, the Hyuga said before nodding at Sasuke and wailing away. That bastard, Sasuke mumbled angrily when Neji was out of earshot. You could have been ruder, couldn't you? Sakura said, glaring at him. Why were you being so mean? He asked a normal question. I just don't like him, Sasuke replied through gritted teeth. For goodness sake, Sasuke-kun, it's been ages since Neji liked Naruto. You don't have to be so angry and jealous at him. Who says I am? Sasuke demanded. Sometimes, Sasuke-kun, you're easy to read as a book, and I know that look on your face. Besides, the two of them are friends, so quit being an ass all the time, Sakura said. I can't help it, Sasuke said. It's just, but he was cut off as a group of Naruto's friends bombarded Sasuke with questions. Hyuga says Naruto moved. Is he awake yet? Does that mean he's getting better? When's he gonna wake up? Can we go see him? Noticing that her friend was going to explode at any second, Sakura answered hastily, Naruto moved, but he's not awake. Now go, before Sasuke-kun kills you. They didn't need telling twice. The look in Sasuke's eyes and his feral growling was enough to send them away. However, he turned to Sakura and demanded, why do you tell them the truth? Now they're going to be there whenever I am. Sasuke-kun, no one will be there every single time you are, Sakura said. But they are Naruto's friends and they care about him, too. You can't ban them from seeing him. Be rational, Sakura said consolingly but with a little impatience. Sasuke could be very childish and selfish sometimes, especially concerning Naruto. The Uchiha put his head in his arms on the desk and closed his eyes, not replying. Sakura looked at him and said, I'll tell them to visit him between 7 and 8 every evening. That gives them 1 hour every day when you usually go home to eat and study. That way you'll never have to deal with them. Okay, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke looked up at her and mumbled, thanks, Sakura. She beamed because those words hardly ever came out of his mouth. You're welcome, Sasuke-kun. I know you've hurting and if you're around Naruto's friends for too long, you'll kill someone, and it's best to avoid that. Sasuke let out the slightest of smiles before looking away, thinking of the blonde. He usually tried to push Naruto out of his brain while in classes and sometimes it worked, but today he couldn't stop thinking of him. What if he moved again and Sasuke wasn't there? What if he woke up? Sakura, do you think he'll wake up? Sasuke asked quietly, not looking up at her. Naruto? Oh, I have no doubt. You know him, he wouldn't let a bullet to his head stop him, so a coma won't either. Sasuke couldn't help a smile at that. It was so true, Naruto was the most optimistic and enthusiastic person he knew. It was one of the things Sasuke loved about the blonde. Sakura glanced at him and asked, Why? Are you doubting it? I'm just scared, Sasuke mumbled. Sakura's eyes widened. Sasuke-kun, are you feeling okay? You said, thanks, to me, at that, and you admitted to being scared. Either you're sick, or you're not Uchiha Sasuke. What's going on? Very funny, he snapped. You know how much I love Naruto. Of course I'm scared. Sasuke-kun, just be optimistic. Naruto will wake up, Sakura said. Optimism is Naruto's forte, not mine. That's right. You're the, screw the world I hate everybody, one, aren't you? Shut up, Sakura. See, that's the Sasuke-kun I know and love, Sakura exclaimed before hugging him. The Uchiha cringed and threw her off. Don't ever do that again, he warned, but she just smiled. Beep beep beep. Another 2 weeks went by without any other promising signs from the blonde. I was starting to wonder if what I had witnessed had only been a fluke, a dream, because it seemed so far-fetched to me when nothing similar occurred. Sakura kept telling me not to give up hope, and I listened to her for a while before tuning her out completely. She knew I never really listened to her, so I didn't care about ignoring her. I think I said so before, but Sakura really helped me a lot during those days without Naruto. Had she not been there, I would have definitely found a way to put myself into the hospital with the blonde.
On another note, as usual, I spend most of my evenings at the hospital, my daily visits not decreasing in the least, and eventually Itachi, Kakashi, and Iruka gave up on trying to change my mind.
Nurses at the hospital started to find my presence annoying, however, though I could care less what women in short white dresses thought of me. Rika was the only one who loved seeing me, and I was never sure if it was because she, like other girls at my university, found me attractive, or if she had a soft spot for lovers and tragedies. Either way, I was grateful for her kindness and realize now how much I owe her all of her help. But the nurses at Kahona Hospital are not what I wish to talk about. What I wish to tell you now is the second day that changed my life, the first being the night of the car crash. I had thought that the worst was over, but I was so very wrong. I remember the day down to the precise minute. It was Friday, April 13th, and I was visiting the blonde at 6 o'clock in the evening. I suppose I should have realized that something wrong was going to happen, it being Freaky Friday, but I was never one who believed in superstitions, so I thought nothing of it. I found out later how wrong I was. I'd tired to skip the entire day of lessons, but Sakura wouldn't hear of it, claiming I'd been skipping too many times already. I heeded her that day because I just wasn't in the mood to be on the receiving end of her anger. But immediately after my last class, I drove to the hospital, unknown to the pain that was coming. Beep beep beep. Any change, Rika? Sasuke asked the nurse as he walked out of the elevators. This question was his usual greeting ever since the blonde's first signs of movement. However, every day since then Rika's answer had always been the same. No, Sasuke, I'm sorry, she replied, and the Uchiha sighed. Thanks, he said before walking into the blonde's room. He took his usual seat by the blonde's bed and grabbed his hand, squeezing it tightly. Hey Naruto, he said softly. How are you today? Feeling any better? If it helps, I feel like crap, too. The Uchiha smiled despite himself for a moment before letting it vanish and replacing it with a small frown. Your friends all say hi, too, Sasuke said, remembering how Naruto's friends had ambushed him when he tried to leave, saying they were going to go with him. Of course, one look changed all their minds instantly. Come on, Dobi, wake up soon. Okay. Sasuke said, knowing he sounded desperate, but not caring. I'm going insane without you, you know. He sighed. Iruka's freaking out about you, too. He attacks me every day to see if you've progressed since he knows I'm here almost 5 times a day. You're worrying everyone, Naruto. So hurry up and come back, okay? Sasuke squeezed the blonde's hand tighter. I know you'll probably blame me for the accident. I blame me for the accident. If I hadn't, you'd be okay, alive, and we could have spent the past month and a half together. And I don't care if you blame me, I just want you back. So, damn it, Naruto, get better soon. Sasuke looked at his watch and figured he'd go get something to eat since he hadn't had anything but a bagel all day. He wouldn't have even had that had Sakura not shoved it down his throat. Sasuke got to his feet, then leaned over and beeped the blonde chastely on the lips. I'll be right back, he said before making his way to the door, only to stop dead in his tracks as he heard the monitors beeping in a different beat. Turning around he looked at the blonde whose eyes were fluttering as he tried to open them, and whose hands, arms, and even legs were moving. Sasuke first thought he was having some kind of seizure, but the beeping of the machines told him otherwise. It was the beat of a normal heart, and that meant, "Quick! He's waking up! It's real this time!" Sasuke shouted as he stormed outside. The blonde's nurse came running in, followed a moment later by Rika. Sasuke hovered behind them with his heart beating so fast he was afraid it was going to fall straight out of his chest. He was afraid and hopeful at the same time. Was this Reed or just another fluke? Was God kind enough to bring the blonde back on his birthday? "Sasuke, he's waking up. This is wonderful," Rika exclaimed, grabbing Sasuke's hand and dragging him forward. Sasuke couldn't form any words, couldn't do anything except stare at the slowly awakening blonde with a rapidly beating heart. And then, it happened. The blonde's eyes fluttered open to reveal the bright blue orbs Sasuke loved. The beeping on the monitors became steady as his heart rate went to normal. He raised his arm to rub his eyes and his nurse went to help him into a sitting position. "There, dear, just sit against each wall. How are you feeling?" she asked. "See confused. Where am I?" he asked, looking up at her. "Honey, what's the last thing you remember?" she asked. Naruto's face scrunched up cutely as he tried to remember. I don't know, sorry." "It's all right, dear," Rika said, stepping forward. "Can you tell us your name?" Uzumaki Naruto." "Good, and—" But Sasuke couldn't take any more of this interrogation. He wanted to feel the blonde, hold the blonde, beep the blonde, and no damn nurse was going to stop him. He moved out from behind Rika and said carefully, "And Naruto?" The blonde turned to face him quickly, recognizing the voice, and his eyes widened tremendously. "Naruto, are you—" Sasuke began but stopped when his boyfriend of 2 years pointed a finger at him and yelled, "What the hell are you doing here, Sasuke bastard? What the hell are you doing here, Sasuke bastard?" Naruto yelled, pointing at the raven whose heart had just stopped. What do you mean, what am I doing here?" Sasuke asked after a moment. "I mean, what are you doing here?" Naruto replied. "I'm here because we're—" Sasuke began, but Rika cut him off. "Naruto, what grade are you in, do you know?" she asked. "I'm in 12th grade, he replied. "It's just the beginning of the year. What's wrong? Isn't it September 2004? He glanced at Rika's sad expression, his nurse's head shaking, and finally to Sasuke, who looked as though he'd swallowed poison. "Isn't it?" "No, honey," his nurse said. "It's 2.5 years from then. It's April 13th, 2007. 2007, he repeated. But how can it be?" Naruto looked really confused and put a hand to his head. "And Naruto," Sasuke began. "You're still here, bastard? What are you doing here?" Naruto asked, the flame back in his eyes. "Why are you saying that? Don't you know why I move?" Rika clamped a hand over Sasuke's mouth and dragged him out of the room, giving Naruto and his nurse an apologetic smile. "What the hell are you doing?" Sasuke demanded once outside. "Sasuke, listen, it's hard to know for sure quite yet, but given what Naruto has told us, I think it's safe to assume."
"Assume what?" "Naruto has amnesia. It was always out there as a possibility when he would awake, but we weren't able to know for certain." "But it's obvious now," Rika said.
Sasuke stared at her. "What?" "Sasuke, I know this will be hard to take in, but just hear me out. The crash obviously affected him mentally and physically, which put him in the coma. However, comatose patients, when they wake up, can have amnesia, which is when they lose their—" "I know what amnesia is," Sasuke snapped. "Naruto doesn't have amnesia. He remembered himself, and me. But he remembered the Naruto and Sasuke of 2 years ago," Rika said, and then the reality of it slowly sunk into the Uchiha as he remembered everything Naruto had said and how he'd acted upon seeing him. The Naruto today, his boyfriend, wouldn't have acted that way. He would have been happy to see him. He would have let Sasuke hug and beep him senseless. But this Naruto seemed to want nothing to do with him.
Sasuke couldn't believe this was happening. After all those days waiting for Naruto to get better, waiting for Naruto to regain consciousness, he never would have even thought of this possibility. A 12th grade Naruto at the beginning of the year would mean that they were rivals but friends. It was the year when they had finally gotten together. So if he could just make Naruto remember then.
I know what you're thinking, Sasuke, Rika interrupted his thoughts, but I ask you not to go about it. And why the hell not? Sasuke hissed. My boyfriend is sitting in there with no memory whatsoever of the last 2.5 years when we've been together. I'm going to make him remember me. Sasuke, think of it from Naruto's position, Rika said. He's in there confused already because in his mind it's 2 years ago. If you were to tell him that the two of you are lovers. We're not lovers, Sasuke cut in, blushing. Rika looked embarrassed. Oh, sorry, she mumbled before continuing. Anyway, if you told him that you and he are dating, do you think the Naruto of 2 years ago would be able to handle that? Sasuke stared at her, understanding her point, but hating it nevertheless. I know you've been dying for this day, Sasuke. But it's best to just pretend the two of you are friends and not dating. At least for now, okay? Sasuke nodded, stiffly, blank look on his face. He was trying desperately not to break down in front of Rika, but it was too much. The boy he loved, cherished, and desired remembered nothing of their years as a couple, but the years when they couldn't stand each other. What should we tell him then? He'll want to know why he got into the hospital, Sasuke asked. Well, we can tell him the truth. He won't believe the truth. Since in this mind we're, sorta, friends, telling him the truth wouldn't work. And can you not tell him that I was driving? He already hates me. I don't want him to kill me before he remembers anything. Rika assessed the Uchiha before nodded. Does he own a bike? Yeah, why? We'll say he was riding his bike to a friend's house when a car hit him. Can you get his bike out of his house and... Oh, damn it, I forgot, Sasuke exclaimed. What? Rika said, looking surprised. Naruto and I live together at my apartment. All of his things are there. But in the 12th grade Naruto would still be living with Iruka, his guardian. Sasuke was panicking. No, Naruto can't move out of the apartment. I won't let that happen. But, what can I do to stop it? Okay. Sasuke, you go sort this out with Naruto's guardian. Naruto can't leave the hospital yet anyway, so talk to Iruka and see if you can come up with a plan. We'll tell him the fake car crash story for now. So, go, Rika said. Okay. If he asks why I was here, just tell him that we're not complete rivals, and that I was worried, okay? Sasuke said before swiftly exiting the hospital. Beep. And you're sure, Sasuke? Iruka questioned. The Uchiha nodded. I was there, I saw it. But you don't have to worry. He'll obviously remember you. It's me he doesn't remember. Iruka looked relieved at that but hid it quickly, remembering Sasuke's dilemma. Iruka, I know you probably want Naruto back here after the accident and since he'll probably still feel unwell, but I really don't want him to move out, Sasuke said lamely, knowing he sounded pathetic. But he couldn't let Naruto leave the apartment. It was too hard to even think about, let alone actually doing it. Sasuke, I understand what you're saying, but I really do want Naruto back here, Iruka said. Ah, come on, Iruka, Kakashi said, speaking for the first time since Sasuke had arrived at their house over 20 minutes ago. Let Naruto stay with Sasuke. Sasuke had never really appreciated Kakashi more than he did at that moment. Iruka turned to Kakashi and said, What? Why would you say that? Because, for one, Sasuke'll probably kill you if you didn't, and two, it'll probably be the only way they'll ever get back together, Kakashi said. I know you want him here, but Sasuke's loss is more than yours. We should consider his feelings. Since when have you ever considered his feelings? Iruka asked curiously. Kakashi smiled. I've always had Naruto's and Sasuke's feelings at heart. Liar. You have some plan formulating in your brain and I won't let you mess with Naruto when he's just awoken from a coma, Iruka scolded. Anyway, how do you propose, if we did let Naruto stay with Sasuke, we explain to him that he's rooming with his rival? Easy, Kakashi said. Easy, please, indulge me. Well, we tell Naruto that his in your house is being fumigated or something, and that for the time being, he'll have to move in with a friend. However, since all of his friends live in dorms, he'll have to room with Sasuke. The Uchiha stared at Kakashi with a newfound admiration. That is an excellent idea. It'll definitely work. And where do we tell him I'm staying? Iruka said. Why, with me of course, Kakashi said smiling. You live here. You don't have a house or apartment, Iruka said, looking at his boyfriend suspiciously. Or do you? Have you been keeping something secret from me? Kakashi just smiled even more and replied, of course not. Then, what are you talking about? Iruka demanded. A friend of mine owns a condo a few blocks from here. He's hardly ever around because he travels a lot. He lets me use it whenever I want. We can stay there for a while, Kakashi explained. Iruka still continued to look at him suspiciously. Are you telling the truth? Would I ever lie to you? Kakashi asked. Iruka just sighed. Fine, whatever, he said and then turned to Sasuke who was looking hopeful. Okay, Sasuke. We'll give this a shot. But that means you'll have to give back Naruto's things so that he can pack them. That also won't be necessary, Kakashi interrupted. We'll just tell him we moved it for him while he was in the hospital. Well, Sasuke will still have to rearrange the apartment somehow. Pictures and things will have to go, understand? Iruka said. Sasuke nodded vigorously. Pictures were nothing compared to having the real thing. If Naruto was back in the house, he'd gladly put anything and everything away to keep him there. That's fine, he said. I can fix the apartment, no problem. Okay. Then I guess we'll do this, Iruka said. Sasuke sighed with relief and gave a small smile while Iruka continued looking uncertain and Kakashi just grinned. Beep. But why have I got to stay with Sasuke bastard? Naruto whined. Because your friends are in dorms and Sasuke's the only one with an apartment, Iruka explained for the 50th time that morning. Stupid rich bastard, Naruto mumbled. What was that? Iruka said. Nothing. Iruka gave Naruto a stern look. You should be grateful to Sasuke that he's letting you stay there. He's probably just doing it so that later I have to owe him for letting me stay. Stupid bastard, Naruto said. Why can't I just come with you? Because Kakashi's, apartment only has one spare room and no couch, Iruka lied. In fact, the condo he was using with Kakashi was so spacious and cozy that Naruto could have slept in the bathtub and still have been comfortable. I can sleep on the floor. Just give me a sleeping bag and I'll be fine. Really? Naruto exclaimed. Please let me go with you. No, Naruto. This has all been settled. Okay. Just deal with Sasuke for a while and everything will be fine, I swear, Iruka said. But Sasuke hates me. He's mean to me and he'll probably kill me in my sleep or something, Naruto complained. I highly doubt that, Iruka said with a smile. If only you knew Naruto. Yeah, why? Because then I'd kill him, Iruka said. Naruto snorted. No way. You're too nice. You couldn't kill anyone, he said. Then he gave Iruka a big teary-eyed face. Please, Iruka, can you please let me go with you? I've already told you no, now stop complaining. Sasuke said he'd come get you so go wait for him, Iruka said. Oh, man? Naruto exclaimed as he trudged to the front door and opened it right when Sasuke was about to ring the doorbell. Both boys stared at one another for a moment before Sasuke said, Ready, Naruto? Yeah, whatever, bastard, Naruto replied, shoving past him. The Uchiha cringed at being called bastard. Sure, Naruto called him a bastard every once in a while, but it had gone down a lot after they'd started dating. He knew he was just going to have to get used to it for a while. Do you have what you need? Sasuke asked the blonde. Iruka already moved most of my stuff. The rest I have in here. He motioned to the backpack on his shoulder. Okay, good, he replied before the two got into Sasuke's car and drove to the apartment. 4x. And this is my apartment, Sasuke said as he led Naruto inside. The blonde looked around curiously and then suddenly stopped. I feel like I've been here before, but I haven't, have I? Sasuke shook his head, trying hard not to blurt out the truth. No, you haven't. Naruto sighed with relief. Okay, he replied. I guess this is where I'll be sleeping. Naruto asked, motioning to the couch. Yeah. There's a pillow and a blanket. Your clothes are in that duffel bag over there, Sasuke said. And, your school stuff is in your backpack. Of course, I don't think you'll be up to that anytime soon. Naruto laughed and Sasuke felt his heart soar before it clenched tightly in his chest like it had been a moment before. Hey, Sasuke? Naruto asked tentatively and the Uchiha looked up quickly at hearing his name and not, bastard. Why are you being so nice to me? Not expecting that question,
Sasuke just stared at Naruto for a moment before replying, "Why wouldn't I be?"
"Oh, I see, you're just helping because you feel sorry for me," Naruto said angrily. "No, that's not true," Sasuke said instantly. "Whatever. You don't have to lie to me," Naruto said. "I mean, we're not exactly friends."
Sasuke's heart clenched in his chest. "Really? I've always figured us to be."
Naruto's eyes widened. "We were friends?" he asked, looking confused. "If you want to be," Sasuke replied simply. "I mean, we became friends after 12th grade. But you don't remember."
I know. And it's so frustrating," Naruto exclaimed suddenly before sitting on the couch with a big sigh. "I'm trying really hard to remember. I want to remember, but I just can't. I've missed two of the most important years of my life, senior year and college freshman year. I'm so behind I don't know what to do."
Sasuke stared at the blonde agonizingly, wanting desperately to reach out and comfort him, but knowing it was impossible. Before now he hadn't quite realized just how hard this was for Naruto too. Hearing the blonde say it aloud, he couldn't believe he'd been so stupid. "Why, you know, Naruto," Sasuke said, and when the blonde looked up he continued. "I can help you out for whatever you need, you, just have to ask." Again the blonde looked surprised, and the look was starting to annoy Sasuke. "What?" he snapped. "Quit staring like an idiot." Naruto laughed, not what Sasuke was expecting, and said, "See? That's more like you. I'm not used to this, nice Sasuke." Despite himself, Sasuke smiled. "Yeah, you wouldn't be," he said. "But you will eventually. And I hope eventually you'll remember about us, and everything will be back to normal." Naruto gave him a look that said he seriously doubted that, but then looked away. Not wanting the conversation to end so soon, Sasuke took a shot in the dark and asked, "Are you hungry? We can go out to eat if you want." Naruto instantly perked up. "Really? Yeah, let's go." Pleased that his idea had worked, then again, he should have known it would. Naruto and food always went together, Sasuke said. "All right. I'll treat you to some ramen." "Yes." Naruto exclaimed happily. He then turned to Sasuke and said with a grin, "You know, I like this, nice Sasuke," before heading out the door. Sasuke followed after slowly, a slight smile on his face. "I was hoping you would, Naruto." Beep beep beep. Despite the amnesia, having Naruto back was better than I had imagined. The apartment was lively again. Naruto's antics never ceased to amaze me. He was always vibrant, always energetic, and always willing to start a fight. He was exactly the Naruto I remembered. Foolish and hyper, but still so kind and happy. I had to be careful around him, however, because my feelings were different. I found myself acting too nice on some occasions and had to revert back to my angry bastard self to make the blonde stop looking at me funny. He always dismissed it, knowing that things had changed even though he couldn't remember. But even though Naruto was back in my life, alive and well, I couldn't stop from wanting more. I should have been content with him being alive, with him being able to walk, talk, eat, and sleep like a normal person than be stuck in a hospital bed. But I wasn't content. I wasn't happy. I missed being able to tease him, beep him, hold him. I missed being able to wake up with him next to me or go to bed with him already asleep. I missed him telling me he loved me, and I missed telling him I did too. The first few days of having Naruto back were hard and depressing. Yet, at the same time, it was oddly refreshing. It was as if our relationship was starting anew, a thought which caused me sadness but at the same time hope. It was hope that lingered in my heart during those days. Hope of wanting Naruto to remember, hope of wanting him to love me, hope that everything would return to its normal state. Hope. It was the only thing that kept me going. Beep beep beep. "Okay, listen." Sasuke began as he stared around at the group of people the after classes on the Tuesday after Naruto had woken up. "I know you're all eager to see Naruto." "Hell yeah. So stop lecturing us, Uchiha, and let us inside," Kiba exclaimed. Sasuke sent the Inuzuka a cold glare. "Shut up," he snapped before continuing. "This is important before you go and start blabbing about everything. I've already told Sakura, but the rest of you don't know. Naruto has amnesia and he woke up thinking it was 2.5 years ago. Meaning, he doesn't remember anything that happened during senior year in high school or freshman year of college. So don't mention any of it, okay? Especially, don't mention anything about me and Naruto dating, all right?" Iruka says it would be too much for him right now. Got it? Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Neji, Gaara, Shino, Hinata and Tenten all nodded in understanding, watching Sasuke with awe. Good. Anyway, he's really excited to see you guys, so, yeah. Sasuke finished lamely before letting them into the apartment. There you are, Sasuke bastard. Naruto exclaimed, jumping to his feet from the couch. I thought you said we'd go eat out today. Sorry, but your friends wanted to see you, Sasuke replied, motioning to the group huddled behind him watching the blonde closely. Hey guys. Naruto exclaimed excitedly, looking at them all. He frowned when only Hinata waved and no one else responded. What's gotten into all of you? Oh, I get it, Naruto said with dawning comprehension. Guys, I'm fine. See? A few bruises and scratches, but no broken bones and the amnesia's not that bad, really. Quit looking at me like you've seen a ghost. Sasuke glared at everyone to get the point across and the group visibly relaxed, smiling and laughing nervously. Sakura took the initiative and said, Hey, and Naruto, it's good to have you back. The blonde grinned and gave his friend a hug. It's good to be back, Sakura-chan. The tense atmosphere died away after that as each of the blonde's friends greeted him. Hinata shyly said she was glad he was all right. Kiba almost tackled the blonde to the floor, declaring he knew no coma would keep Naruto down for long. Shikamaru, Neji, Gaara, Choji, and Shino just gave the blonde a welcoming smile and handshake. If you guys want anything to drink, there's some Coke in the fridge. I've got some work to start, so I'll leave you to talk then, Sasuke said before heading to his room. However, Naruto grabbed his arm before he could make his escape and asked, Where are you going? I said I have work to do. Ah, come on, Sasuke, stay, Naruto said. You can study later. Come hang out with us. Sasuke shook his head. No, Naruto, he said. Please? He asked. The blonde was acting so much like his old self that Sasuke couldn't help but cave. Rolling his eyes, he then pinned the blonde with a glare and said, Fine. But for a little while. Naruto grinned and led the way back to the others who were all seated at the couch or on the dining table chairs. Sasuke sat down next to Sakura on the floor and crossed his arms with annoyance. You should be happy that he wants you around, Sakura whispered to him. Doesn't that mean something to you? Well yeah, but I really do have work to do, Sasuke said. Too bad, Sasuke-kun. I think this is more important for you right now, she said. If he wants you around, he obviously remembers something of his old feelings, don't you think? The Uchiha looked up at the girl who gave him a pointed look and he felt his heart lift with hope. Maybe Sakura was right. The Naruto during senior year wouldn't have cared if Sasuke had stayed or left. But the Naruto that was there right now had, so something must have been different. Feeling a bit better, Sasuke gave Sakura a light smile in gratitude and she smiled back. Yo, Sasuke bastard, Naruto called from the kitchen. Nobody but Sakura noticed Sasuke cringe from the insult before he replied, What? Where do you keep the glasses? Naruto asked. The Uchiha sighed and got to his feet. Once in the kitchen, he reached for the cupboard next to the fridge and said, Glasses are in here. Plates are in the one next to it, and utensils are in the drawer by the sink, okay? Thanks, Naruto replied. Sorry for asking. You don't have to be, Sasuke said, giving the blonde a look. You just started staying here, remember? Naruto nodded and gave the Uchiha grin. Mind helping with drinks? What? Can't do it on your own, Sasuke teased. The blonde glared at him. I can sew. I just thought you'd be nice for once and help. Because you can't on your own, huh? Shut up, bastard. Sasuke smirked, enjoying the conversation that he'd missed having with the blonde while he'd been comatose. The two got the drinks ready and returned to join the others, handing glasses out to everyone. Naruto took a seat on a chair while Sasuke resumed his position on the floor beside Sakura. The blonde grinned around at everyone and said, So, what's been going on with everyone lately? Anything new or interesting? Everyone looked around carefully, trying to think of something they could say that wouldn't remind the blonde too much about the years he couldn't remember. However, Naruto realized what they were doing and gave them all a half-hearted glare of annoyance. Guys, don't worry, okay? Just tell me what's been going on, I want to know, he said. You know how Kiba's always been hung up over Hinata? Sakura piped up, and Kiba turned to look at her quickly. He finally got the nerve to ask her out. They've been dating for a few years now. Naruto turned to look at his friend with surprise, but a grin formed its way on his face. Finally, man! He exclaimed and patted Kiba on the back as he and his girlfriend blushed slightly. Yeah, and we're still all wondering what she sees in him, Neji said, casting Kiba a small glare. Everyone laughed except Sasuke, who wasn't paying attention to anyone other than Naruto, and Kiba, who glared at Neji and said offensively, "Hey! What's wrong with me? Still as protective over your cousin as I remember, Neji?" Naruto asked. The Hyuga just took a sip of his drink and didn't bother to reply. We're also still wondering what Tenten sees in you, Neji, Kiba said, getting revenge. I mean, at least I'm fun to be with. You've just gotta stick up your ass. How she manages to put up with your bitchy attitude is a question none of us can answer. Naruto choked on his drink. No way. You and Tenten? He exclaimed, looking between the couple. And I thought you said you'd never be able to forget me, Neji. Neji looked up at Naruto quickly, as did Sasuke and Sakura, all three of them having realized the same thing. Why, you remember that? Neji asked. Naruto looked confused. What are you talking about? You remember, Neji began, but Sasuke cut him off. Heart-pounding, the Uchiha stared up at Naruto and asked, so far you've only remembered the beginning of senior year. But Neji didn't admit to liking you until well into the second half. Why, you remember that? The blonde looked even more confused and frustrated as well. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember anything else. I can't think of anything else, but, I. He trailed off, looking dejected, and Sasuke backed off, feeling his heart drop. It's okay, Naruto, Sakura said, taking over because Sasuke couldn't face him anymore. We all understand. Don't worry about it now, okay? Naruto looked up at her and nodded, then gave a small smile. Okay, he replied. Sorry, everyone, he said to all of them. You don't have to apologize, Naruto, Kiba said. Anyway, let's get out of this remorse mood we put ourselves in. What were we talking about again? Neji and Tenten, remember? Ino said. Yeah, Naruto exclaimed. How did that happen? Actually, Naruto, Tenten began. You were the one who got us together. I did? The blonde asked, looking confused again. She smiled. It's okay if you don't remember it. But you decided Neji needed to date someone, and apparently, I was a good enough target. You did all in your power to get us together. I went on almost 30 dates with her in 1 week, because you were so persistent, Neji said. We went on a few double dates too. Me and Neji and you and Sass. Tenten shut up quickly when Sasuke looked up at her threateningly. Really? I was dating? Naruto asked quickly. Who? Everyone looked around uncomfortably, darting glances at Sasuke, who glared at them with the promise to tear limbs if they divulged the information. Sakura, however, who was used to his glare, only glared back. The Uchiha ignored her request of telling the blonde the truth. He only looked away and took a sip of his drink. Naruto was still watching everyone, trying to figure out what they seemed to be hiding. What aren't you telling me? Who was I dating? He asked. Not just one person, Naruto. Sakura decided to intervene. Just a few people you met from classes who were dumb enough to say yes. But Tenten almost said a name, he said, frowning. Who was she talking about? The pink-haired girl sighed. She was going to say me, but I told her not to mention that because. Me and you? Naruto exclaimed, looking a bit delighted. The expression made Sasuke cringe. But he knew that the high school Naruto had been obsessed about Sakura for a long time. Sakura gave him a smile. Yeah, but we didn't last long. You got your eyes placed on someone else really quickly. Naruto didn't notice how she glanced down at Sasuke nor how the Uchiha glared up at Sakura. Sasuke then got to his feet and said, I'm going to let you all talk. I've got some work I really have to start. Naruto looked over at him, wondering why he suddenly didn't want the Uchiha to go, but watched as he left the room, shutting the door to the bedroom a bit more loudly than usual. He looked around at the rest of the group and asked, is he mad about something? He seems mad. Again, everyone looked uncomfortable, and this time looked at Sakura, since she was the only one other than Naruto that the Uchiha was close to. The pink-haired girl sighed again. He's just stressed out about classes, and he's disappointed about something. Don't worry about him either, Naruto. You know Sasuke, always brooding. That's for sure, Naruto agreed. Then he frowned and asked, it isn't anything because of me, is it? Everyone looked up at him quickly. Was he remembering something? However, the blonde just looked confused, not as though he remembered something important. When no one answered him, he said, I mean, he's been acting like this a lot lately. It's different than how he usually treats me. How's he acting? Sakura asked, curious. Sasuke seemed to be hurting the blonde without even realizing it. He hardly says a word to me, Naruto replied. I mean, we're not exactly close. Everyone smirked knowingly at that. But, from when I remember, we at least used to fight or have some kind of conversation, and now, he just ignores me like I've done something bad. Sakura knew Sasuke was hurting about the blonde's amnesia and because he still believed everything had been his fault. His need to blame himself heightened when Naruto got amnesia, because now he believed he'd caused that too. However, she was pleased to see that Sasuke's attitude was depressing the blonde. It meant Naruto's feelings for the Uchiha really were somewhere inside. Sakura smiled at Naruto and said, Naruto, leave Sasuke-kun to me. Okay. He's been a bit off lately because he's had trouble at work. This wasn't a complete lie, but it wasn't exactly the truth either. The blonde nodded. Okay, I guess. I'll go talk to him right now, okay? She said. Don't worry about him. She then excused herself and walked into the other bedroom, not even bothering to knock. She found Sasuke lying on the bed staring at the ceiling with a blank look on his face. He didn't even turn to acknowledge her when she shut the door behind her and sighed. I thought you said you had work to do, the pink-haired girl said. I lied, he replied. Why? Because I just can't stand being in the same room with Naruto, he said. It hurts too much. Do you realize you're hurting him too? She said. These words effectively made the Uchiha turn to look at her. Sakura nodded at his disbelieving expression and sat down on the bed beside him. After you walked out, he asked if you were mad about something and if it had to do with him. Don't tell me you. Of course not, Sasuke-kun. I don't exactly have a death wish. HN. He remembers how in senior year the two of you fought and acknowledged each other, Sakura said. You remember how, while you were rivals, you were also sort of friends. You tolerated him more than anyone else, and he was one of the first ones to ever get you to talk. I know, Sakura. What are you getting at? Sasuke asked. Naruto's upset because you're not acting like that. You're just ignoring him from what he just told me, and that's not right, Sasuke-kun. I know what you're trying to do, but it's only making him feel bad. The Uchiha looked away. It's hard, Sakura. I know it is. But you really don't. He remembers you. He remembers you too, Sasuke-kun, and don't you forget that. Sakura exclaimed angrily. Sasuke could be so stupid sometimes. What's so great about remembering the times before we got together? Sasuke demanded. Because he still remembers you, Sakura said. He hasn't forgotten you, Sasuke-kun. His feelings for you must definitely be in him somewhere. Him being upset about your attitude proves that, don't you think? Why don't you try and act like a normal human around him? Because it's virtually impossible right now when I know he doesn't love me back, Sakura, Sasuke yelled. Then make it so he will. She shot back. The Uchiha sat there glaring at his friend who only glared back just as equally. She was right and he knew it, and as much as he didn't want to admit it, he knew he was being horribly rude. Naruto needed friends more than ever now, and since he was staying with Sasuke, he should have been more accepting, more welcoming to him than he had been. Sasuke sighed and hung his head. Sakura beamed at him. Know your mistake now? She asked. He nodded. Good. Then come back out, okay? Talk to Naruto instead of sulking like a 4-year-old, Sakura said. Fine, the Uchiha said as he followed Sakura back to join the others. Beep. That turned into a hell of a party, Naruto said 5 hours later as he and Sasuke were cleaning the apartment after everyone else had left. Note to self. Never let Kiba get drunk, Sasuke said, and Naruto laughed. True, the blonde agreed. I was surprised you'd held your liquor so well, Dobi, the Uchiha said. Since you and Inuzuka are so much alike, I would have thought you'd be just as hungover as he was. Nah, I drink responsibly, the blonde said. Unlike you, who hardly drank anything at all. I had 1 can, which is fine for me, Sasuke said defensively. You should be glad I'm not like Kiba, or you'd have to be cleaning the bathroom up all night. Naruto shuddered. Then thanks are in order. You've repaid me by helping me clean up, Sasuke said as he put a couch cushion in its proper spot. Well, I am sleeping on the couch. It would be a lot more comfy with all of the cushions back in place and stuff, the blonde replied, and Sasuke gave a small smile. However, to the amnesiac blonde, who wasn't as used to the nice and smiling Sasuke, stared at him with astonishment. What? The Uchiha snapped. USM smiled, the blonde stated as though he still couldn't believe it possible. Yeah? What of it? Sasuke said. I have just never seen you smile before, Naruto said. It's really nice. Sasuke stopped and stared at him. Almost this exact same conversation had occurred the first time Naruto had seen him smile. To be precise, it had been exactly the same time around which the amnesiac Naruto had thought it to be when he'd woken up. Pain tugged at Sasuke's heart, but he hid it well, looking away. I'm gonna go to bed, he mumbled, wanting to leave the blonde's presence. Fine. Mind if I watch some TV? Naruto asked. Sasuke shrugged. Just don't put the volume up too loud. Sure. Naruto replied before plopping down on the couch and grabbing the remote control. Sasuke watched him for a moment before sighing and heading to his room, unaware of Blue Eyes watching him leave. In the uncomfortable emptiness of his room, Sasuke laid down on his bed, staring at the ceiling as he had been 5 hours previous, before Sakura had went and gotten him. Thinking about the conversation he just had with the blonde, he felt his heart clench painfully in his chest. Had Naruto been the way he was before the accident, he would have made Sasuke forget about going to sleep and make him stay up and watch random shows. He would have been so annoying and so irresistible that Sasuke would have had no choice but to lay down on the couch beside his boyfriend and endure pointless shows. But this Naruto wouldn't do that. This Naruto had no reason to ask Sasuke to cuddle up with him for the night. This Naruto wouldn't even fathom the very thought because it just wasn't how it was supposed to be. Sasuke knew that living with this Naruto wasn't going to be easy, but he wasn't sure just how much he could suffer before losing it all. He wasn't prepared to live with an amnesiac Naruto. He didn't know what to do. He had to think every thought through, having to be certain not to say anything that would let him know about their years together. But he wanted Naruto to know. He wanted to at least try and tell him, to see what he would do, or say. He had an inkling to that already, but he just wanted to give it a shot. But Iruka had been adamant against it. He said that it would just be too much for Naruto right now, and deep inside Sasuke knew he agreed. It still didn't make it any easier. But it hurt so much because their feelings were so much different now. Being with Naruto was going to take a lot of getting used to. Used to the bastard suffix, used to the reoccurring fights, and used to the lack of affection. To be continued, and thank you for watching.